All right, this is Dave Tate with Adam Driggers. I want to start this interview by asking Adam, why you decided to do the XPC Finals.
Originally, I did it because I had spent about 18 months doing two things: correcting an issue I was having with my elbows so I could bench, and correcting squat depth. I had evaluated my squat. I was squatting high. I fixed it, and the XPC promised tight judging. You'd have to squat to depth. And so that's why I did it. That's why I chose it. This particular meet, I'm doing it because I got hurt at the last XPC. And so basically, the platform at this XPC is a nemesis. I've got to make it back there. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm doing this year's meet.
Now, what's the qualification process for this?
You had to do a qualifying meet. Then you had the semifinals, and that's what I did last year to make it to last year's final. I made it to the final. I finished the meet in spite of being hurt, and he invited me to this one. So that's
now, with the qualifying meet, do you have to have a qualifying total before you can do a qualifying meet?
No, I think you have to get the qualifying total at the meet.
Okay, so it is based upon a total first,
yes.
And then the semifinals,
right,
and then making it to the
finals. A total put up at a qualifier, then a top 2 placement, I think, at the semis, then the finals.
So this will be I think you've been in all of them, right?
I got hurt before the first one, so this is my second one.
So this will be your second one.
Yeah.
And how has over the past year, how has your training changed this year based upon the things that you've said from year prior?
I trained a lot less heavy. I trained heavy less often. I originally planned out a 3-week cycle where I did raw, briefs, suited, but because of the way some other things fell, I basically fell into a 4-week cycle where I'm only in full gear once every 4 weeks. And that accomplished 2 things. It has helped me recover better between heavy lifts, and it's keep me from just staying so beat up. I was training hurt all the time, aches and pains and whatever, and that was getting old. I was tired of it, and so I've spread out these heavy lifts up to 4 weeks, and I have felt good all training cycle.
Now, I know you trained with Brian Carroll, and after the last meet was when Brian was diagnosed with all his extensive back injuries, and your back was also trashed as well. You decided to kind of go a little bit different route than what Brian did. Not saying that one's better than the other, I'm not even saying the diagnoses were the same as they were different. But it would have been easy for you to say, okay, here's what Brian's doing. I'm just going to go and follow through and do what he's doing because he's getting this advice from so-and-so and so-and-so. But you decided to go a little different path. Why did you decide to do that? Just to piss Brian off?
And it did. But that wasn't the reason. But it would have been easy to fall in and just do what he did. I respected what he brought back from McGill. There's no doubt it's good stuff. Yeah. That's for sure. But after I decided that I was going to continue to lift, before he ever came back from McGill, I had a plan that I said, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I just didn't want to change it.
And you've been competing for how long?
I did my first meet December of 2000.
Okay, so in lifting, you've been lifting?
I've been lifting for 17 years.
Okay, and how old are you?
I'm 40.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to pinpoint down here is you're older. You've been doing it longer. Maybe not longer, but you've been doing it beat up longer. So when you went into making that decision process of A, am I going to continue doing this? And B, yes, I am going to continue doing this. I assume you went back on your own experiences with past injuries and things that you've had to contend with and used that to help develop the plan?
Yeah, basically that's exactly what I did. With a little bit of stubbornness, Two that's probably been built up over the course of lifting too, over those years. Originally, when I went to the XPC, I was beat up. I was having a few health issues, and I told my wife, after this meet, I'm taking 2 months off. I just got to give my body a rest. 2 months. Got hurt, spent 4 days in the hospital, turned 40 in the hospital, and I was out of the gym for a month because in my stubbornness, I was like, this isn't how I had planned this. This isn't how it's going to work. And so instead of taking the original 2 months off, I was back in the gym. Now I was doing just rehab stuff, just body weight lunges and, a little bit of core work and stuff like that. But I was still back in the gym in a month. But that's because in that month, I decided I am going to lift again. I am going to compete again. And in making that decision, I decided how it was going to happen. And that was part of the process.
And training at your level, and, at your age and training age, let's forget age, we'll just say training age. Getting beat up's a given. Yeah. So when this meet's over, you're going to be beat up again. Hopefully it's going to be less than what it was, years prior. How do you determine when it's time to pull back and when it's time to push down? Because I got beat up before I retired, and that was the hardest thing for me to do. Is you never knew, because you're hurt. There's no doubt about that. You're hurt, but you don't know how hurt it really is. And sometimes you can go full throttle. Sometimes you got to back off. Most of the time I made mistakes, ended up going the wrong way. You're making the right decisions. So what helps you guide when to push and when to step back?
This year is probably the first time I have ever really followed a program that this is what I'm going to do and no more. And that's the only way I've been able to do it. I designed a program for myself, and I stuck to it in spite of the days that I felt good. In the past, I would have pushed it. In the past, when I spaced these heavy weeks out, getting ready for this meet, on this week, if I felt really good, the number I had in mind didn't matter. I'm going more, and then more. And I just have not done that this time. This is the program. This is what I'm going to do. I know I'm hurt, and so I know I need to be smart because ultimately the numbers, although I want to do well and I want to win. It's not just I want to do well. I want to win. But I want to make it there. So being stupid in the gym would possibly prevent me from completing my number one goal, which is making it back to a platform. So if I'm going to do anything stupid, I'm going to do it on the platform. But until then, I'm going to be smart.
I've always said in the bigger meets, it's not always the strongest guy who wins. It's the healthiest and the smartest. And because a lot of times the strongest guy, I would say most of the time in our sport, there's exceptions. There's people who just nail it every time. Yeah. But for the most part, the strongest guy is usually self-destruct, before they get there, or they do stupid things in the meet and leave the door wide open for that. Now I don't want to go through the injury list of all the different things that you've had, but you did mention earlier that after this last meet, you were going to take 2 months off, but before that, you said something that kind of insinuated that you were kind of thinking about hanging it up. Why didn't you?
That's just not how I wanted to go out. Being pulled off the platform, carried off the platform, was just not the way I envisioned walking away. When I walk away, I'd like to literally walk away, not be carried off the platform. And I struggled with explaining that to my family. That's just not how I'm going to finish. So I knew. I knew in the back room that I would compete again, unless there was something so wrong with me that I would not be able to. But I had determined that I wanted to. And so when I found out that I probably could, then it was convincing everybody to just leave me alone and let me do it, to let me finish on my own terms, let me walk away on my own terms, and if, in all honesty, if it happens to me again on the platform this year, I probably will. But if it happens that way, at least I knew that, I determined to make it back to the platform, and I did.
What would be your ultimate own terms?
I'd like to win. I'd like to go out with a PR total and a win. That's what I'd like to do. I'm not saying that I would absolutely, completely walk away if that happened. Say next month I win, and I just walk away. But that's the way I would like to walk away. I'm not going to compete for years in the Masters. You know what I mean?
So how do you think it will end? I mean, if you win and you go out on a high note, this is your high note. So why not just step out and take a role of a coach instead of risking another year, in another big meet and getting carried out again? To share a little bit of what I've discussed with my wife, that is probably what will happen. Mm-hmm. That is probably what will happen. And actually, as long as I do well, that's more or less what I've promised. So this meet is the most important meet that you've ever done in your life?
Most important meet I've ever done.
Because it more than likely is going to be the last hurrah. So everything that you've done leading up to this has been made with better decisions?
Yeah.
Would you say better support?
Yes.
So it should be basically your day to seize as long as you stick to your plan.
Yes.
And do what you're supposed to do and not do anything stupid.
Right.
And I guess the main question would be, when I was sitting in the office of orthopedic surgeon, which I've been in several of their offices, as have you, I was asked if there were any regrets that I had in the 25 years of competing. And the only answer that I could give is I didn't lift enough. I didn't lift as much weight as I wanted to. And the answer back was, that's probably the best regret you can have. So walking away, after this one, knowing that you did everything right, you put all your eggs in a row, if you go out on a high note, low note, any regrets?
The only regret I would have is that I didn't train the way I have this time, all the time. I wish I would have trained smarter. I wish I would have listened to the older guys when I was the younger guy who told me what I would tell younger guys now. Train smarter. You're being stupid. That's a dumb decision. Mm-hmm. You're making a mistake. That's what I tell people now. And that's what I was told when I was that guy. And the only regret I have is not listening to that. Then I would have been better. But is that really a regret or is it a blessing? Because you have a gym. You got a stable of lifters. Yeah. So
had you not learned that over the past year, what kind of coach do you think you would have been without learning that?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I wouldn't have the experience to share. Like I said, maybe my lifting would have been better, but the experience that I have would be less. Wouldn't have the lessons learned to pass on.
You'll find as you move on as a coach, if that's the decision that you decide to do, which, we'll just say you cross that bridge when you get there, because it's, all different. We can talk off camera about that. All different kinds of shit go through your brain at that point in time. What happens at that point is, and you're already kind of seeing it now, you become that guy. The guy that you were talking about, the guy that was sitting across the table from you saying, you know what, you really should stop doing these things. And when you become that guy, you got to realize that person on the other side was you. And they're sitting there saying, who the fuck are you to tell me this?
Exactly.
You're fucking old, beat up, you can't lift anything.
Yeah.
You know, how are you gonna deal with that?
I don't know. Maybe I should call some of those guys and ask them how they did they did it, because that's the
I don't know if
attitude.
they have, you know.
Yeah, that's the attitude I gave. Well, you don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of. You don't know the decisions I make. But they were right. Looking back, they were dead on. And I see that now at 40 years old and having my share of injuries. But I don't know how I'll take that. I'll shake my head, I guess, like they did at me, and I'll tell them, if you stay with it long enough, you'll realize that I was right. If you're around long enough.
Yeah, I mean, usually those people that you're speaking to that are across the table, they're not really, as you were and I was. I mean, we weren't problematic in any way. You do have a stable of lifters and so forth, so I'm sure you do run across some of the guys that are problematic. So how do you handle them like a man?
They get asked to leave or told they can't come back. Generally those guys, the guys I find problematic, they come, they're there for a while, then they're gone for a while, then they're back for a while. And, when I've had enough of them, when they take their leave, and they say, hey, I want to come back. No, you can't come back. You're a problem, I haven't had to kick, but I think 2 people out actually say you've got to go and you can't come back. But I've told several guys that have taken leave, you can't come back.
In case anybody's wondering, there's a story in his training log which is hilarious about one of the guys that he had to kick out. But I guess what I'm getting at is, is how do you do it like a man?
The guy that I did kick out, he walked in the gym with his bag, and I said, you need to sit down, we got to talk. And of course he didn't see it the same way I seen it, but, I just finally had to tell him, but this is my place, and this is the team of guys that I have managed to keep together, and you don't fit. You're not a part of it anymore, so you need to go. And the same thing, the guys, generally they're calling you, hey, can I come back? And I've got kind of a hierarchy, I'm Brian and Clint. If I've got a guy that I'm on the fence about, I'll take it to them. Mm-hmm. And one other guy, Tony, that's been with me since December 2000. If I'm on the fence about somebody, I'll ask them, what do you think? I've got a guy that just started training with us again that, basically I let, them decide if he could come back or not. But, so, there's some discussion in my gym. I'm not a dictator, like I'm the only one that says what goes. But when I've had enough of somebody, they're told to leave. And like I said, if I need to kick them out, I'll sit down with them and tell them, you've got to go and this is why. And at that point, their perspective doesn't matter anymore, But I've only had to do it twice, in about 10 years. So,
as you know, in this sport, most people that come into this sport don't last very long. I always guess and say 1 to 3 years. And you have your gym is just powerlifters, so you've had your turnaround, of guys. Same way as Chad Walker. Same as Chad Walker and some of the other guys who have their own small gyms. What qualities or traits do you think separate the guys that last a year, maybe 2, 3, to the guys that actually last long enough to get to a high level? Because, no bullshit aside, there's some people that are going to get to a high level fast. Yeah. But this is a sport that takes a long time to get to the high level. It's not going to happen in a year or 2 or 3. What do you see from being around these guys and watching them? Because as a gym owner, you're watching them more than they're watching themselves. What traits do you see are in the guys that stay and make it to a national level to the ones that just only last a year or 2?
That's actually pretty easy. And I've thought about it before. There's some people who are looking for the easy way to do anything. And anything they do, if it becomes hard, they quit. It doesn't matter if it's powerlifting or a career or job. As soon as it gets hard, they find the next thing to do. Those aren't the people that stay, obviously. They come in and they realize, especially since we're multiply, they realize that throwing on a suit is not all there is to it, or putting on a bench shirt is not all there is to a big bench. And the guys who are looking for the easy way, as soon as they figure out that it's not just the gear, they leave. They're gone because it's hard work. The guys who will stay, and you know, I've had some guys that's been with me for a long time, Brian, Clint, Tony. They're the guys who, if they want something, it doesn't really matter how hard it gets. They're going to do it. It's just going to get done. Hard, easy, it doesn't matter. They're just going to get it done. And that's the trait. They're just, hard doesn't matter. Difficult doesn't matter. This is what I'm going to do. And they do it. And we do it. You know, we push through difficult times, and we push through the months we can't bench because of our elbows, or the months that we can't touch a weight because our backs are screwed. And we just keep doing it and pushing it. And perseverance, I guess, maybe is the trait, the word I'm looking for. You know, some people have it and some people don't. And the people who don't, they're the people who are there for a few months, maybe a year. Generally, they're there long enough to do one meet, and when they realize you don't total over 2,000 pounds your first meet just because you put on a new suit, they leave. They're gone. They have no perseverance.
When this competitive chapter of your life is done, what are you going to do next?
Well, the gym's at my house, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, I plan to stick around. I plan to coach. I plan to continue to lift in some way. You know, I watch your videos. You guys are lifting. And I plan to do that. To ease my competitive nature, shooting. I love to shoot. And that's probably what I'll do to ease whatever competitive nature is still there, you know, nagging at me. But I plan to stay around the gym. I plan to keep my guys together, you know. I plan to, as I lose one or two, you know, as you always do, I plan to look for guys to replace them and keep I think I have about 13 guys on a bench night, and I'd like to keep that number of guys and continue to lift. I'll coach those guys, you know, I'll take that role, help those guys, you know, handle those guys when they're competing. But, you know, I plan to still hit the gym and train. It is something I look forward to. Even the days when, you know, I'm not pushing it, even the first week of my cycle when it's raw and, you know, just light and reps, I still look forward to it and enjoy it. And I hope that continues, you know, a desire to come in and train, even if it's not for the next meet, you know.
Have you ever thought about how if all your role was to coach, and it didn't matter if you squatted 400, 500, or 900, have you ever thought about how many more Clints and Brians that you could put out there if that was where your focus really was? Because I know as a competitor, you are working and you are helping each other. Yeah. But when you take that aspect out of it, your eyes become more focused.
Well, yeah, this past Monday, you know, was a heavy bench day at our place, but I wasn't lifting, mainly because I wanted to take this week off to be ready for today. And I was much better able to see where my guys are at, you know, and really watch what they're doing, how well their training's going. You know, I was actually surprised. I've been training with them the whole cycle, but, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm not lifting. I'm helping, you know, pulling belts and shirts and whatever, and I was surprised at how much more I'd noticed and was able to observe when I was just not focused on my own lifting, was able to watch what they were doing. So I would imagine I'd be a lot more helpful to, you know, several more guys. Hopefully put out a couple more top guys.
How did that make you feel, being able to find more?
It was good. I liked it. Yeah.
Okay. This is Dave Tate with Adam Driggers.